Greetings, everyone. My name is Barbara Coverson. I am the program manager for Family Strengthening Families, and it is time for our Parent Talk and Discovery Center podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joey Ford, the Family Community Outreach Specialist for Family Strengthening Families, and welcome again to our Family Talk podcast.
Yes, Joey, we're here again.
Yes, we are. And for this podcast, we want to focus on this month being National Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month for 2023, the month of April. And when we are to start with, we want to look at the child abuse data. We do know that every 10 seconds a child is abused, and that's one too many.
Exactly.
Just one too many.
Exactly.
Some of the data that we have before us is that nationally, almost 4 million referrals were made to Child Protective Services alleging maltreatment and involved over 7 million children. Over 7 million children. That's just one too many. And the types of child abuse that was included in this was neglected, physically abused, sexually abused, and sex trafficking. When we look at our state data, we find that over 34,000 received an investigation or alternative response. And then we find that over 10,000 were deemed maltreatment victims. And sadly, 49 child fatalities because of maltreatment. And because of this, we want to take a closer look at what is child abuse, as well as the types of child abuse today.
Just to probably put it in simple English, it would be just something, doing something to a child that harms a child or puts a child at risk of harm, or if you didn't do something that you should have done, and that still puts a child at risk of harm or either harms the child. So when we look at that, Joy, and we talk about, basically there are 4 categories that have been defined as areas of child abuse. And let's just kind of briefly go through a couple of those categories, Joy. The first one being physical. So if we look at physical, that's the one that probably people know about. You can see that one.
Right.
Easy to detect. The child got bruises, broken bones. This is the type where the body has been harmed in some type of way, and it's easy, kind of to see. And so if we were to look at, some warning signs or some indicators that this might be going on with the child, if the parent is giving conflicting stories about what happened,
right.
or the caregiver, somebody said, well, they fell and tripped over the shoestring, and then somebody said no, they walked into the door. These stories are not adding up. They're not adding up. And this is one. If the child has 2 black eyes. Now, the likelihood of 2, but you might accidentally bump into someone, but with 2 black eyes, we call those bilateral. Something has happened.
Right.
Yeah, something has happened. If you have bruises that are the size, recognizable shape, like the shape of an iron, a spoon, a fork, or bite marks, those are recognizable shapes. Even if the child may even itself be engaged in some self-destructive behaviors like biting or cutting, having some suicidal thoughts or stuff like that, that could still be a result of some type of physical abuse going on with that child.
Right.
Yeah, Joy.
And even wearing excessive clothing. Wearing excessive clothing, trying to hide what's going on.
Yeah.
And even protecting the abuser.
Joy, look at here. It's getting ready to be summer. The temperatures is going to get warmer.
Right.
And so, it's 100 degrees and you got on a fully clothed, a coat,
Right.
jacket, sleeves on,
Right.
hood, all this.
Flags should go up.
Yeah.
Alert.
Yeah, because it's hot. Yeah. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So let's look at another one.
So when we look at emotional would be another type of abuse, and that would be where anything said or done that is hurtful or threatening to a child, such as name calling or belittling a child or making threats of harm to a child, that is what we would determine to be emotional abuse. And if anything, you can look at some indicators that you may notice or could see. It would be low self-esteem, poor coping skills, things that children may be constantly tense or on guard, or seem to separate from realities at times. And then too, there's because kids, when you find someone suffering in silence, and they feel that there's no way out, or this is the only way, you tend to find where some may have attempted suicide. So, and then the total opposite of that, they may desperately seek affection. So it goes from one extreme to another, and emotional abuse is real. And some may think they think we tend to find that people may think of physical abuse only, but emotional abuse is very, very prevalent, and sometimes they demonstrate difficulties in school. We'll see things such as that in schools, along with talking badly about themselves as well. So we want to be aware.
Yeah. And I was just thinking when you were talking about that, Joe, it really says emotional abuse is probably the most difficult to detect or to prove or to show, because it doesn't leave a outside mark. It hurts the inside of the child that's being abused.
That true self.
Their true self. And so it's really more about control. The perpetrator is really trying to control that child.
Exactly.
And so sometimes when you look at that and that scarring of that child on the inside, words matter. At this point, words matter to children. So if they're hearing you're no good and you're gonna be like your no good dad, or you're gonna be like your no good mama, nobody wants you but me, you're ugly, you're stinking, all these derogatory things that you can say to a child, that could it can have an effect on them. Exactly. And yeah, so we'll get on into that, but I just thought that's one thing, when you were saying that it's real to that child, it's real. And so I think I heard I think it was Tyler Perry was talking about when he was little, he talks about some of the abuse he suffered when he was little. Yes. And he would say he would go underneath the porch of his house, and these are things he said publicly, and he said, and he would just go into another world, and he would go into this fantasy world, and that was his coping. That's how he coped with his abuse. And so that's why how he got so creative and all this creative stuff. So I think that's one of the things that I always like to bring that up, because the best thing is that it doesn't happen. Right. But if it does happen, we have to remind our children that it does not define who they are. Exactly. Because Tyler Perry could have let it stay right there and been a middle basket case. Or he could have taken it and did what he did with it. Right. Instead, I'm not going to let this beat me. And now he's like, I don't know, is he a billionaire now or what? I don't know. Something like that. Something like that. So he, and he's and out of his pain came some purpose. So, even though sometimes we want to make sure we always let our children know that this does not mean that's who you have to remain. Right. So true. So true. So we have another type of abuse, is sexual abuse. And this is any type of sexual contact or activity with a child. It could be something as simple, I won't say simple, but showing pictures of, pornography, showing some naked pictures to your child, or taking some pictures of a child,
Right.
but that's still sexual in contact and
Mhm.
content. And so some of the indicators that a child may be being sexually abused would be if they had a difficulty walking or sitting,
Yes.
their clothes are bloody and torn, stained, if they have any type bleeding or in any type of bruises or swelling in that genital area. These are things that you might want to check into, if there's any pain or itching and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Nightmares,
Yes.
bedwetting.
Bedwetting. Mhm.
Now your child then stopped using, wetting the bed. Now they started back.
Right.
Okay, these are things that you just don't overlook.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Poor hygiene. All
Mhm.
those.
Can't get clean. Just, they want to take forever baths,
Mhm.
just in the shower forever. They cannot get it,
Mhm.
or they don't want to take a bath.
Right.
I'm just not gonna clean up. I'm not gonna take a bath. So it's one extreme or the other.
Mhm.
That could be something possibly
Mhm.
going on in that way.
Very
If they have inappropriate sexual knowledge for their age, you got a 3-year-old and they know how to, they knowing all this stuff. What
Mhm.
is a 3-year-old supposed to know about sex?
Exactly.
And sadly, 2-year-olds are the ones most often sexually abused.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's important to teach them these things early
Early age.
age.
Early
Yeah.
age.
We call it the bathing suit rule because kids may not understand all this stuff, but you can put on your little kid a bathing suit, no matter what the age is, and you can tell them, everything underneath this bathing suit
Mhm.
is private. If
Right.
somebody touches you in anywhere underneath, then in an area that will be covered by this bathing suit, let me know.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the bathing suit rule. So, and then as they get older, you can explain more and more to
More
them,
and
but
more.
you need,
Mhm.
we have to become more and more alert and aware of things that goes on with our children.
Yes, we do.
Mhm. And I guess there's some little subtopics of the sexual abuse, like sexual grooming is one.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
When the child is targeted.
Mhm.
Mhm. Child is targeted, and at times the adult may think that
Mhm.
the person is after them.
Mhm.
The relationship is all about them, but the whole time the eye is on the child.
Yeah.
And so they tend to gain the trust of the victim, and they start trying to fill needs that they may have or speak of, or some wants or things such as that. And eventually that isolation will come back up again, where they isolate the child, or
Yeah.
and trying to get them all to themselves,
Yeah.
and always available to
Yeah.
be able to do or help out with these things. We have to really, really be careful of some things. And then eventually the relationship will become what we don't want it to become, and that's sexual or sexualizing that relationship. And so we really, really need to be paying close attention to these situations as well, because eventually they can start controlling it and controlling that child. And it's all done in secrecy, and it's happening around you, and you don't even realize that it's happening. And these are one of the most frightful, another frightful thing, one of or subtypes of this here sexual abuse, but it's real, and it's happening.
Because kids, they don't, your 8-year-old is not gonna stay 8 years old. And so now that's that perpetrator's preference, you know, then when they age out, they're through with that child.
Mhm.
Child is not through because guess what? The child does not know what normal is. They think this is normal. And so they're trying to maintain that
That
relationship.
relationship,
They
right?
they don't want this to stop. They don't want it to, you know,
Because that's what they know now.
yeah. They never had an opportunity to know normal. So to them, this is normal.
Right.
And now you're trying to let me go? No. And so this is a very dangerous phase because this sometimes will result in a child being murdered or either child committing suicide or the perpetrator murdering the child because I'm through with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that family structure is very important. Family support and knowing who your support is and what type of support you're receiving for them within your family, whether it's 2-parent or 1-parent home, is very, very important. So,
And you know, I think statistics show that whenever a child is the biological father, this does not mean like all of the time, but it just simply the statistics show that whenever the biological father is involved and active in the child's life, even if it doesn't live in a home, the child is less likely to be abused by anybody. You know, that's just something. And so we have to take a look at that
right.
as parents. You know, you might be mad with the father. Maybe the father is not paying child support. Maybe the father, but don't withhold the child. And don't keep, you know, the
Exactly.
father out of that child's life
Right.
simply because of those things, like because I still want him, or I don't like, you know, his new girlfriend or whatever. All of those things are, you know, you have to do what's in the best interest of the child. And statistics show that it's in the best interest of the child to allow that biological father to be active and involved.
Right.
Now, if there is some other type of, you know, if the biological father is a risk, then that's not what we're saying. You know, if they're involved in drugs or gangs or whatever, then of course you don't want to subject your child to additional risk. But if that's not the case, it's just a matter of money and they're not paying child support or stuff like that, you know, that's not, don't keep them out because of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think there's one other one, Joy, that we haven't talked about too much about in the area of sex abuse before we go to that last one, and that's sextortion.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that is something that's, you know, is just really kind of increasing because of access to social media.
Social media. Electronic devices.
Yeah.
Without supervision.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that we kind of just briefly just say in that area, that's why it's so important for you to continue to maintain good communication with your children so that they'll open up and talk to you about anything. Because if someone, you know, this sextortion has to do with someone trying to either get money or more nude pictures or sexual pictures from your child. And of course, all this is illegal, but trying to get something from them. And so, and they will threaten them and all kinds of things. And you need to know, you know, sometimes because they're children, they're just not always going to get it right.
Yeah.
And they may make some poor choices while out here on the internet, social media. So they might make some poor choices. But we have to let them know, even if they made a poor choice, that I'm still here for you.
Yes,
I still love you.
yes.
Nobody gonna love you like I do. And that's what, when you want them to, even if I messed up, come back to me.
Right. No matter what.
Because so many times they don't. And then it doesn't end well at all. Yeah, so so that's one that we are going to kind of try to probably continue to focus on. In another, maybe some of our other podcasts coming up, so that we can kind of keep that on the forefront, because we want to make sure we continue to maintain communication with our children.
Yes.
Enjoy that.
yes.
Last one is
That last one is neglect.
Mhm.
And neglect is when you find a pattern of failing to provide the child with their basic needs.
Mhm.
Basic needs. And then we see that it's actually an abuse by omission.
Mhm.
And so it may be intentional and it may be unintentional. But we have to know that it is abuse, it is child abuse, and that there's 5 types of it. We find physical, physical neglect, medical neglect, educational neglect, emotional neglect, and inadequate supervision
Mhm.
is also neglect. And sometimes this is one that most people don't even think of or realize, but
Mhm.
it is truly another type of child abuse. And there are some indicators. When we find that a child is frequently absent from school, yes, that you should be concerned. You want to know why, because if there's no excuses being given, and sometimes the parents may not even be aware of it, or because, like we said, it's unintentional as well as intentional. Again, they may wear clothing that is soiled or too small or too large or often need repair. These are some signs of neglect. The child lacks dental care or even medical care, immunizations or glasses is something that they need, but it's not being provided for them to help them to be their best or do what they need to do, especially in school and things such as that. Poor hygiene. We may see them demonstrate poor hygiene, smells of these different types of things that shows poor hygiene, and crave attention. That one is coming back up again because if they're not receiving that actual attention that they should be receiving at home, then they're going to seek it in other areas, other places from other people. So when you find a child that seems to be hungry or hoards or steals or begs for food, that question of neglect will come up or should come up. This is one here where they frequently report of caring for younger siblings.
Yes.
Caring for younger siblings, I mean, to a capacity or in a way that is very much out the norm, and they're often doing it. When you see a child acting out, most times they're acting out because they're lacking in something that they should be receiving, which is a basic need of theirs. There's so many indicators.
Joy, you know, that's something. A lot of times when we see children that act out, we just want to say they're troublemaker, but there's a reason behind that.
Mhm.
It may not be neglect, but it's something. It doesn't have to be neglect.
It's an indicator of something.
It's an indicator of something.
Mhm.
So as a parent or a caregiver or a neighbor or something, we have to get to, I want to say especially the parent, to the bottom of why is this child acting out?
Right.
You know, and so and not just let it go like they just stubborn, you know, because I've had people say they're just stubborn. Well, why are they being stubborn? You know, because come on, this is when a child is born. I say this, and we say this in parenting classes all the time. When a child is born, the only thing it knows to do naturally, innately, is to cry. Everything else after cry is learned behavior.
Right.
So if the child is stubborn, that could be that the child is stubborn, but it got it from somewhere. There's a reason why this is taking place. And so we don't get to just say, oh, they're just being stubborn and throw it out the window like it's nothing. We got to get to the place because we're trying to produce a child. We're trying to turn a child into a healthy thriving adult,
Right.
because they're not going to stay kids. So what am
Mhm.
I producing? And so when we do that and we take a look at it from that perspective, it makes us so much, it opens the eyes of the person that has to deal with that child, because society is not going to be that forgiving.
No.
And so we want to make sure that what we're doing in the home is helpful for the child.
Right.
Yeah, and not just dismissing, like, get over it. No,
Mm.
it may be something very traumatic has happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think, Joy, you mentioned this a little while back about the true self of a child. And that's, a child is born with a true identity,
Mhm.
a true inner self of who they are. But what happens along the way, I guess is what I'm just saying,
Mm.
things happen in a life and begins to shape that true
Right.
self. And and I think probably why one of the reasons, two of the reasons why is because children have vulnerabilities. One
Mhm.
is they're gullible.
Yeah.
And the other one is their source of information is limited.
Mhm.
They don't have a whole bunch of sources. Their family, their little inner circle, it gets bigger as they get older,
Right.
but their sources of information is limited. So if they're getting information from faulty sources and someone that's trying to do them harm,
Right.
then they're going to be gullible to that and think that this is, like I said, this is normal,
Mhm.
and I'm going to allow this to happen, to me, and I'm going to keep the secret and all those things, and it's messing with their true self of who they are. And
Mhm.
eventually it begins to shape and to change and to mold that into something different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, indeed.
This is what we call the child being led down a blind alley. They just, wherever the perpetrator leads them, that's where they're going.
That's where they're going.
Because
That's all they know.
that's
That's
all they
that's
know.
what they're being shown and given to be led by. So it's so important to understand how impressionable a child is at young at their ages, young and on up. And it's even more important to realize that because of that, they have to be protected. They have to be protected, and it's our responsibility as the adult. It's all of our responsibility, as an adult to do that.
Because if abuse is taking place, the child cannot help itself. The only way a child that's being abused is going to be helped is some adult must intervene.
Mhm.
Yeah. So some adult must intervene. A lot of times when a child's being abused, we just for a minute, just through the eyes of the child, what they're saying. They start buying into the lie. It's really a lie, but they don't know. But they start buying into it. This is being led down this blind alley again.
Right.
So I caused this to happen.
Oh yes, yes. Cause it to happen thing, and they what the power of illusion. Especially depending on their stage of development there, and then it's my fault.
Yeah.
I'm bad.
Yeah.
They take it on. They take ownership of something that they didn't even.
They're the victim,
They're the
but
victim
they're taking ownership as though they're not.
So sad, so sad.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And so then they even think that I don't deserve any better. That low self-esteem, and judging themselves and talking bad. They take on those actions. And it's just not good. But we need to understand again, children need protecting, and the responsibility lies in the hands of adults.
Yeah.
It does.
And so as we're coming to an end of our broadcast today, we want to talk just a little bit about what you need to do if you suspect abuse is taking place, or if a child comes up and tells you. Maybe the child just says, you know, this is what's going on. And the child may not even realize at the time that they're telling, because they don't know what normal is, but this is what's happening.
Mhm.
And even if they do, your first thing is to remain calm.
Mhm.
That's going to be a somewhat
challenge.
difficult. That's a good word,
It's
Joe.
a challenge.
Because someone's hurting a child, and you don't. So, but you cannot go into a rage,
Right.
because first of all, you haven't heard the whole story, and when they're telling you, they're only going to tell you a little bit. So if they start seeing you get worked to the rest of it you may never get.
Right.
So you got to remain calm and just listen.
Mhm.
This is a time to just kind of just listen. Whatever they tell you, this is not a time to go into, well, when did this happen? Why did in interrogation mode? This is just a time to listen. Whatever they want to share, and let them share that with you. And then don't make promises.
Mhm.
Because if you make a promise that you're gonna get this taken care of, or whatever, this person is gonna be in jail, and it doesn't work out that way, now you have added more trauma to the child. Because now the person that I trusted, that I thought could help me, didn't.
Mhm.
Broken promise. And so don't make promises.
Right.
Just let the child know that you're gonna, start working, getting some help or whatever, and we'll just walk through this together,
Mhm.
and let them know that they are not alone, that you're with them, and you'll and so and then go ahead and report it.
That's right.
I think
Can't
the
say that
thing,
too much.
yeah,
Report it.
and I think the thing that they say to us, Joey, about this is because another reason that they don't want you to do a lot of interrogation is because if you do, then sometimes you can just hurt the investigation, Joy.
Right.
Yeah, you can hurt the investigation, because if people that are trained to question a child that's been abused are the ones that need to do that.
Mhm.
Because you could mess up and they say you led the child or whatever. And so you just want to not do that. Just allow other people to be able to get involved and get to the bottom of that.
Right. Exactly.
And I think one thing that is good about this reporting, Joy, is that you can report anonymously.
Mhm. And that's what so many are afraid of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to tell my sister. I don't want to tell my boyfriend. I don't want to report my mama
Mhm.
or my uncle, my auntie. I don't want to report the neighbor because they right here.
Mhm.
But when you can do it anonymously,
Mhm.
give as much information as you have, as you can give. If you have that address, locate, whatever you can give as much as you can give.
Right.
But you don't have to give your name.
Mhm.
And so that way, I think, Joy, even if long as you suspect it, and if it's true or not true.
Right.
If it's not true, no harm done, because you
done your part.
you did your part. It was anonymous.
Part.
And if it is true, you've done your part, because now the child can get some help.
Right.
So we want to make sure that you can report anonymously. And what would be how would they report this, Joy? Who would they call or contact?
Well, they could contact their local child protecting service office. Sorry. Or they could call Mississippi's hotline number, which is 1-800-222-8000. That's 1-800-222-8000.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the national hotline number. It's called 1-800-4A-CHILD. 1-800-4A-CHILD. That's 1-800-422-4453. And then there is an online resource, whereas you can report to reportabuse.mdcps.ms.gov. So there's several avenues for reporting. And again, you may report anonymously. You don't have to give your name.
And if you don't know anything else and you can't remember any of these numbers that Joy gave you, dial 911, especially if it's something right now, if it's an urgent thing, like your child is in danger right this second, somebody's beating them up right now, you can hear it, 911. You don't have to go through all this process, if a child is in immediate danger. But if you have the opportunity, if you can't think of these other numbers, 911 will work every time. Okay.
Yes.
And I know this is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and it will come to an end. But we don't want our awareness and our prevention efforts to come to an end.
Right.
We want to continue to remain vigilant in our efforts to look out for children in our communities. We want to make sure that we're doing all that we can do to help our children be able to survive and thrive, and to know that that they are cared for, that they are loved. And sometimes things happen in life, but they don't have to define who I am as a person.
That is so true.
So we want to make sure that whether you have been a victim of child abuse or not, that you are special as a child, you're unique, and you have this great opportunity ahead of you. Great opportunity to be all that you can be, no matter what. And so we're just thankful for you joining us today on this broadcast. Joy, do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
I'm thankful as well. Thank you all for joining us.
All right. So we are so excited today to have talked about this serious topic. It's not a pleasant topic, Joey. It's not one that but it's a necessary topic. We didn't want to have to talk about this, but it's necessary. And so we hope that you have gained some information that you will share with others, that you will use and be more alert yourself with what's going on with the children in our community. Until the next time, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.